Hey everybody, David the AI Guide here, fresh from TED AI in San Francisco. And today we're going to focus on day one, session one, which started off with a bang. So Andrew Ng was up first. You guys all know who he is. He wanted to talk, first of all, about AI and the perception in the public. So he first wondered, does AI amplify our worst impulses? And specifically with AI, he was talking about social media and the use of AI in social media because it's feeding you what you want to see 24/7, 365. He also wanted to talk about loss of jobs, which we talk about here, and humans being wiped out. So basically, this is very interesting. He said first that the type of AI that they're really working on now is called RLHF, Reinforcement Learning from Human Feedback. And that means that the models are either supervised or unsupervised, but people are responding and telling them, yeah, that's right, no, this is wrong. He basically was saying that further AI development is simply an engineering problem to be solved at this point. So they use humans to rank responses and build what is essentially a reward model, which is this is a good outcome from the algorithm, this is not a good outcome from the algorithm. So when Andrew Ng talked about job replacement, his overall thesis was that for a while, AI is going to complement humans, not replace them. And he gave an example about radiology. So we know, and I've told you several times, that AI can read X-rays, MRIs, etc. better than humans. But what they cannot do, that radiologists do, is develop a treatment plan based on the reading. So what he said was AI will not replace radiologists. However, radiologists who use AI will replace those who don't use AI. And this was a theme through many speakers. Andrew believes that new jobs that are unknown now will be created due to AI. With regard to will AI wipe out humanity, he stated that they are learning to control AI better every day. What he said on this point was beyond control, human intelligence is very expensive, right? He's talking about food, shelter, hiring someone as an employee who's super smart, very expensive. What he was saying AI does is open the door to cheap intelligence. He believes that the problems that we're seeing now with AI will recede, meaning hallucinating, wrong answers, not being able to control it, etc. And he wrapped up by saying, look, we need AI to solve the huge general problems facing humanity: energy, climate, medical, and more. So that was Andrew Ng. Each speaker, by the way, spoke for roughly 15 minutes. So next up was Percy Liang, who is director of the Stanford Center for Research on Foundation Models, because foundation models are where everything is right now with AI. Every speaker talked about that. So he said these foundation models are the combination of NLP, natural language processing, and LLM, large language models. And he gave a little bit of history. He said the first NLP model was built back in 2004, so just short of 20 years ago. He said that achievement was built on decades of research that started in the 50s and really more in the 60s. One thing he talked about a lot, he said it's very concerning that at the beginning of AI, everything was open, everything was shared within the research community, and now it isn't, that these LLMs are held by a few entities and they won't share anything. We're talking Facebook, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, the big four. And he said basically there's three core characteristics of all future AI work that we need to see. First and foremost is transparency, meaning understanding what's in these models and how they work. He said that he wasn't sure that was likely, but it was critical. Next, he said was values, that it's very important what values these models reflect, and right now they're unilaterally determined by big tech. And the final piece is attribution, in other words, crediting people for the work that was used to do the new work. And he said that's wholly missing because the big tech companies scraped everything off the internet and took everyone's intellectual property with no credit. He said a great example of what works is Wikipedia, which is free and open to all with all contributing. That's the way AI needs to be. Linux is another one, he said, open source. The development of it was transparent. He said we need to consider the social context that the AI is being developed for, that's really important. So he was really pushing to disrupt the concentration of AI in big tech. And in fact, he said this could all be changed. That was his opinion, that could all be changed and within a relatively short period of time. And he was a strong advocate for this. And many of the speakers were an advocate for a more open AI ecosystem. By the way, this is going to be a long video to cover even just session one. Okay, so next up was Stephen Wolfram, a famous physicist. I believe he's from University of California at San Diego. And he was talking about something that was very intense, and I certainly didn't get all of it. But basically, he was talking about how they are using AI to build a computational model of the entire universe. This is stunning. He said this is a computational model of space-time and gravity. So he said how time is understood has evolved over time. And he said back in antiquity, time was considered structural. It was rigid rules, everything. Then in the 1600s, time was considered to be mathematical. That was during the Enlightenment. And then it went all the way as a mathematical understanding of time to the 1980s, where the model of time became computational, meaning computers. And now he said just this decade, in the 2020s, it has become what he called multi-computational. And he talked about the Reuliad, which is a concept I really don't understand. But he said it expands concepts and paradigms for modeling the universe. And he said a lot of this was about quantum mechanics, right? He said that human minds are limited and time-bound, and quantum mechanics is not. So what they're trying to do is formalize what we know about the world in computational terms. He believes that computational language is the next way of explaining the world. And he talked about a concept called computational instability, which means you can't predict everything. He said there's no way to predict everything in the universe, and certainly not what will happen in the future. Then he said with regard to AI being used for automation, new things will occur as AI unfolds. Occupations will become more fractional. In other words, occupations over time have been getting more and more specialized, and that's going to continue. He said we need to define what we want and then use this computational framework to build it. So he said that this is going to cause a fundamental change in human life with a new focus on what to do, what should I do, versus how do I do this. Why? Because everything will be automated. One interesting thing he talked that a few people talked about was, the concept of, are we living in a simulation? He said, no, definitely not. He said the Reuliad, which is the reality we live in, is always unique. So that was really mind-blowing. And as I said, parts of it were very difficult to follow. because physicists don't tend to put things in everyday language. Next up, Max Tegmark, another physicist, MIT professor, Institute for AI and Fundamental Interactions and Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines. So Max Tegmark posted a video 5 years ago, back in 2018, about the dangers of superintelligence, and he was warning about this again. Now get ready to have your mind blown. This, to me, was the biggest concept and piece of news coming out of all of TED AI. AGI will be developed by either OpenAI, DeepMind, or Anthropic. He said we are only 2 to 3 years now from AGI. 2 to 3 years. And please remember that Ray Kurzweil predicted 30 years ago that AGI would come in 2029. And we're 5 years from that. So a little longer than Max Tegmark is saying, but Max is pretty much at the center of AI development in a lot of ways. And he may be right. It may not be 2 to 3, it might be 5, but regardless, he said AGI is coming without a doubt, no exception, it is coming. He said that within 18 months from right now, we will shrink the timeline for developing new technologies from roughly 20 years to just a few years. And by the way, he made a follow-up comment right after he said this that fried my brain. He said, you got to keep in mind that once the first AGI is created, that AGI will be able to create the next AGI itself, which will be even more powerful. He went on to say that Yoshua Bengio, who by the way won the Turing Award together with Jan LeCun and Jeff Hinton, Yoshua Bengio said in 2023, this year, an LLM will pass the Turing test. Other speakers said that's already happened, but that's what Yoshua Bengio said. And keep in mind, GPT-5 is ready but not released. Max Tegmark went on to say that all the way back in 1951, Alan Turing said that machines take control, that is the default, they are a new species. And then in 2023, Sam Altman said, and I'll do a separate thing on Sam Altman shortly, lights out for people is what superintelligence means. Max Tegmark went on to say, we lack a framework for AI safety. Evals, meaning evaluations, and debugging are necessary but not sufficient for safety. We need provably safe systems. It's the only way to control AI. So then he went on to say there's a way to fix this whole problem, and it's proof-checking code that can be embedded in AI systems. And he said it's called program synthesis. It's a combo of the coding and proof of specification, meaning the algorithm does what you intend it to do. He said then you only have to trust your proof-checking code, not the algorithm, which they don't understand how these things work, right? They still don't, and they all said that. And he said what MIT is working on right now is mechanistic interpretability, meaning understanding the machines. So he said using these program-proof safe AI is possible. He said we need to pause the reckless race to superintelligence. My comment is that's not going to happen. Wait for the Sam Altman specific video. I do. So then the next speaker, this is all session one, mind-blowing stuff. The next speaker, Shane Legg from DeepMind, one of the 3 founding partners, the guy who coined the term AGI in 2001. He said when he was growing up, he had dyslexia and all his teachers thought he was dumb. Then he went on to talk about Ray Kurzweil, who is the most famous predictor of tech development. Ray Kurzweil predicted exponential data and calculation. He predicted AGI by 2028, 5 years from now. Sorry, a few minutes ago I said 2029. It's 2028, 5 years. So 2 to 5 years, AGI is here for sure. That's what really blew my mind at TED AI. He said AGI is a system that can do all human cognitive tasks. He said way back in 2010, when they first founded DeepMind, their first business plan included seeking AGI. He said, as a general proposition, intelligence is very valuable and more is better. He said, at first they did the AIs that could play Atari games, and then AlphaGo that really stunned the world and particularly drove the Chinese into a massive pursuit of AI. He said, this is one of the founders of DeepMind. He said, LLMs are a huge breakthrough. He didn't realize how good an LLM would get from just reading text. He didn't foresee that. He thought it needed to be multimodal, which means text, images, audio, other things. This is the next frontier, by the way, that they're working on right now of AI that will lead to AGI. Multimodal, which they call LMM rather than LLM. He said their biggest breakthrough so far has been AlphaFold, which predicts protein folding. AGI will accelerate that. Science issues will be solved very, very rapidly in the future. Superhuman intelligence, there's many ways for it to go bad. He thinks things should be slowed down. So that's 2 in a row saying, let's pump the brakes on this whole thing. He said regulation is needed immediately because there's 10 companies and governments working on a path to AGI right this minute. He said more energy right now needs to be put in understanding how algorithms work than increasing their capabilities. So that was Shane Legg, co-founder of DeepMind. Stunning segment. Next, Walter de Brouwer, who talked about AI and language. He's another professor, also might be at UCSD, San Diego. He has spent his life studying language. By the way, his wife, Sam de Brouwer, put together the whole program for TED AI on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. He said only 200,000 years ago, humans could only say single words or just sounds like grunts and stuff like that. 200,000 years ago. 50,000 years ago, stories came along. These helped to build community. 5,000 years ago, only 5,000 years ago, first written tablets. Then only 60 years ago, we morphed from writing to the internet, which really opened up the scope of knowledge. And then he said the latest breakthrough only 3 weeks ago. So that's the beginning of October, the first successful working multimodal model, LMM. That is hot off the press news that hasn't been talked about in public. He said that language encodes models of the world. Multimodal is a representation of the whole world. He said this multimodal model is a key step to AGI. So he said on the path to AGI, here are the big breakthroughs. 2017, Google Brain, transformer model, parallel processing, meaning using the cloud for AI computation. Then in 2019, first LLM at OpenAI, and note it took from 3 years, from 2019, but only 3 years, from 2019 to 2022 when they released ChatGPT. Less than a year ago, OpenAI developed breakthrough stuff, 3 years. He said language is infinite across time, ideas, and more. He said the linguistic view of AGI is a feedback loop with human input. Using AI and language, it will recursively self-learn. Human input will not be required at some point, then the AGI will be fully autonomous. He said that this AGI would become very, very complex, and therefore become unpredictable, just like humans. Humans are incredibly complicated. I guess I didn't realize it till I got a little bit older, but humans are the most complicated thing that I encounter in life. They're very unpredictable. So think about amplifying human intelligence 1,000 or 1,000,000 times with that kind of unpredictability. Gives you pause for reflection. So next up was a woman named Pelanomi Moiloa from Africa. She talked about LLM and language, and what she talked about was they're creating a whole new thing. So the whole thrust of LLMs has been to make them bigger and bigger and bigger. They're going the opposite way over in Africa, making LLMs smaller and smaller and smaller. Why are they doing this? They are doing it to preserve languages that are disappearing. Every day, she said, language disappears. Every single day. To give you a rough idea that right now there's about 7,000 different languages in the world. 50 years ago, there were 20,000 languages in the world. So it's gone from 20,000 to 7,000. And in the next 20 years, we'll go down to only 3,500. So historical languages and the whole culture then is gone. The culture's gone because most cultures were oral, not written. So they are working on these little LLMs, as they call them, little LM, because these disappearing languages are difficult to model. They're using a smaller model with the same data and getting better results. She said the other problem with the big LLMs, which a lot of the speakers talked about, is toxic training data, meaning a lot of negative, hateful, poisonous stuff. Training is done by minimum wage people and minimum wage in other countries, so we're talking very little money. And they're stealing, it was her position, they're stealing these people's work with no credit for peanuts. So she went on to say that language takes the internal world and brings it external because you can talk about your internal world. It's a complete mystery without language, by the way. She wrapped up by saying, AI can help build connections. We need to be careful but not afraid of it. So next was a guy named Edo Liberty, and he's built a couple of companies up and sold them. He's an ML machine language expert, and he talked a little bit about the history of machine language, starting out with what's called expert systems. If you want to know more about that, see my history videos that I did 3.5 years ago at the beginning of the AI Guide. He said these were based on experience. They were smart but not knowledgeable. He said humans are good at both. So he said that machine learning systems for 50 to 70 years went along, starting in the 50s, as you know, went along as smart but not knowledgeable systems. So they could do one very narrow task and do it very well, knew nothing about anything else. He said the breakthroughs are things that we've talked about frequently here on the AI Guide: cloud computing, neural nets, advanced GPUs, and also evals. So he was the second person to talk about it. It's an AI that evaluates another AI model. And then he went on to talk about how AI is very, very different from traditional computer software programming. He said, first of all, is the database, which is, he called a vector database. That's what works with these foundation models, LLMs, LMMs. He said that a vector database is the merging of data and algorithms. Vector databases mirror how the brain works in retrieving information. So he said these LLMs are billions of model parameters, and the vector databases are trillions of data parameters. Trillions. He said this is a complete revolution. These are not like regular databases in structure at all. He said the foundation models will continue to get better because they delegate certain processes to the vector database, so it happens in the database and reports results to the main algorithm. Foundation models are more streamlined and more knowledgeable than any computer programs before it. So that was Edo Liberty. So last in session 1 a whole mind-blowing thing, a fireside chat between Chris Anderson, the founder of TED AI, founder of TED period, and Ilya Sutskever, the CTO of OpenAI. So this guy is the ultimate source of what's happening with AI in the entire world right this minute. Again, this is all just session 1, and it's all mind-blowing. He said that AI will become smarter than people soon and truly vast. AI is nothing but a digital brain sitting inside a large computer. He said, why did I get into AI? Well, at 5 or 6, he realized his individuality, meaning I am me versus everyone else, separate. He said as he got into his teens, he then got curious about how intelligence works. This is really before AI was in the mainstream, long before it was. And then he said he came to realize that if he could make AI work, it would be truly impactful. And that's why he picked it as a career. Ilya Sutskever. He said the digital brain is not as smart as biological brains. There's gaps still. Computers will be smarter when AGI comes. AGI impact, dramatic impact on everything. Healthcare. He said healthcare today is wait for an appointment, sometimes for a long time, short visit, big bill. In the future, your doctor will be always available and all knowledgeable. This is in the era of AGI. He said AGI is both positive and negative. It will grow very, very rapidly when the first one is done. And he again mentioned that the first AGI can make its own second AGI that's even better. He said, will it go rogue? Well, he said, I want to address the issues that currently exist with algorithms not understanding them, hallucinating unpredictable results and wrong results, and to prepare for AGI and have guardrails on these things. He said, in less than a year, the idea of AI and AGI is widespread, all triggered by ChatGPT November of 2022. He said the good part of AGI and AI will be that people will start to collaborate together to do things in ways that have never happened before. He went on to say that this technology will change society and culture, that we will morph from individual behavior to collective behavior, as it will be the only way to exert any control over AGI. That is a stunning statement. So huge stuff. Only from session 1 of the first ever all AI TED Talk. So TED has had other speakers on AI over the years, but this was the first all AI TED event, 2 days. Session 1 lasted from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So thanks. Next we'll do session 2. Take care. Bye.